Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this new series of talks called our Focus series. What we've realized is AssetMap does releases every 2 weeks. And normally it's all little things, all very intentional to save you time and get you to work smarter. But some features that we release is not obvious where it fits into the advice engagement process because it's effectively new or different. And what we want to do is really have short, succinct sessions where we want to focus on that feature and explain where does it fit in and what's the benefit of using this new feature. And so today's talk is by Kirsty, and she's going to take us through drafts. And maybe just before we kick off, I want to share some really, really great news. Laura Warburton won the Financial Planner of the Year last night, which we're very proud of. She's an AssetMap part of the AssetMap community, as are so many other of the community that have been finalists and winners of Financial Planner of the Year. So I think that shows the quality of people in this community, and encourages all of us to do our bit and support that Financial Planner of the Year. All right, so and we can do the normal stuff, record the session and circulate it afterwards. All right, Kirsty, I know this is going to be, I think, less than 30 minutes. So everybody needs to pay attention. We're going to go fast, and yeah, take it away, Kirsty.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. And like Benny said, today we're going to really just focus on this new feature called drafts. So it was launched probably about a month or two ago. You would have seen some communication on it. But let's start with talking about what is drafts. And really, we like to say it's more than just a feature. It's a bridge between a client's current financial realities and future possibilities. And it does that by giving you the ability to make changes to a client's asset map without changing their current picture. So, reflecting these changes and the ability to toggle it on and off to show a client different options, different scenarios that you're talking through, and with the absolute need to enable a conversation. So, to really allow you to engage with the clients around those changes. So I'm going to start by just talking through what does it look like, what kind of changes can you make, and how would that reflect on the client's map. So the first thing you'll see when you enter the drafts modal, and we will go through how to do that in a minute, you'll see this black bar appear at the bottom of your screen, and that is to indicate that you're in drafts. You'll also see a watermark on the page showing that you're in a draft in a scenario. And in this black bar, you'll see that you have the ability to add additional financials. So you can add additional cash flows, incomes, or expenses. You can add assets, liabilities, or insurance and reflect that change on the map. You can also remove any financials and edit financials. And that could mean editing the description, editing the amount, or even changing the ownership. And none of these changes will change the client's current map, but all will be reflected when you select the draft overlay that you've created for the client. You'll also see at the bottom here that there's a toggle where you can show the changes and hide the changes. So you can basically go back to the current plan or current picture and then reflect the change. You can also create multiple drafts for a client. So if you think if there's multiple options that the client has, you can create a draft for each option, and you can flip through the different drafts here by selecting this change draft on this modal. And of course, you can close the drafts mode and revert back to the current picture. I want to talk through some of the icons you'll see when you make changes in drafts. Here's an example where, let's say I want to show consolidation. So I want to show that we're taking these 3 discretionary investments or discretionary funds that the client has, and we want to consolidate that into one investment. What you'll see is every time you delete a financial as part of the draft, you'll see these lines go through the financial, and you'll see this trash can icon on the top right to show we're removing that as part of this draft, and the plus icon to show we're adding in a specific financial as part of this draft. So those are the icons when you remove or add. If you edit a financial, you'll see this little pencil icon. You'll also see that all changes are highlighted in pink so that you can quickly draw attention to the change. So any edits will show with this little pencil. And as I mentioned, you can edit the description, you can edit the amount, you can even edit ownership to show something moving from one individual to another. And lastly, if you add any additional financials, you'll see that with a little plus icon in the top right-hand corner to show that change. And we'll go through how you create the drafts and how you add and remove and edit. But the idea is that you create these drafts to reflect a different possibility and then turn it on and off to show the client this is where you are now, but here is the change that's happening. And maybe the biggest question we get is, well, when do I use drafts? When in my process? And we think that the best place to use it is to enable the more difficult conversations that you have with clients. For example, if there's a lot of change and it's confusing, there's things moving around, drafts can help bring clarity by reflecting that change visually for the client, that they can actually see this is what's moving where, this is what's changing, and understand that. Or if the changes are really complex, drafts can help simplify structural changes by again showing it to a client visually, helping them make an informed decision. And the third one is when the consequence or the impact is high. For example, if there's multiple options for a client, and it's very important that they understand those options because the impact of each one of those options is high, you can use drafts to reflect the different options, again, helping the client make an informed decision by giving them the ability to see the change, to tangibly and visually see it. Drafts can also be used anywhere in the advice engagement process, and it really depends on the specific situation. For example, you might be reviewing a potential change that just impacts the client's structure. Then you would use it in Asset Map to reflect that before you've even got into target maps or planning for the client. In other scenarios, you might use it to position certain implementation options. So, for example, you've taken the client through their current picture, you've worked through the planning with the client, you've worked through the options, and now you want to reflect that to show a client this is the implementation that we've agreed on. In some instances, you may even use it post implementation. You may have done the planning, implemented it for the client, but just want to reflect. Remember, this is what we implemented. This is the change it's going to make to your asset map picture. So, as we go through a couple of scenarios today and work through the functionality, please start to think about in your practice with your clients, what are some of the ways you think drafts could assist in those engagements? And please post it in the chat so we can all share that together. All right, so I'm going to switch over into Asset Map and go through this example. So the first thing I want to just work through is how. How do you use it? How do I create a draft? In this client, let's talk through a little bit about what he's got. So he's earning an income, he's got a retirement annuity, he's got some life cover, he's got some discretionary investments here, and we're still waiting for information here on property and mortgages. But let's say I want to create a
So,
draft
sorry,
now. Yeah, sorry,
Kirsty,
Ben.
did you change the
Yes.
screen?
Yes. Can you guys not see that?
No, I don't, we still
It's
seeing the
not on the
slides. If
map.
you could just, yeah, if you could just
Ah,
maybe
give
stop.
me a second. Thank you for that. Let's do that. All right. Are we on Asset Map now? Thank goodness
Yes,
you're on, Benny.
perfect.
Okay. So here you can see his picture. Like I was saying, we've got some trust investments, some share portfolios, retirement funds, and income, and some risk benefits at the top. Now, if I want to create a draft to show a potential change, let's say I want to show the client, if we combine these two unit trusts into a new investment that targets the return that they require. To create the draft, I click on the colorful plus here on the left and I select drafts. Here you'll see I can select existing drafts that I've created already, or I can create a new draft. So I'm just going to call this new draft and create that. But the idea is to name it to reflect the change. So consolidating investments or, moving change in structure, or to use the name that you would use to reflect that. As soon as I create the draft, I'm now in the draft mode. You can see the watermark on the back of on the page here, and you can see this bar pop up at the bottom. Now I can start to make changes that I want to see. So for example, if I want to remove these two unit trusts and replace them with a new investment, I can simply open it up, click on the trash can and delete it. Remember, it's not deleting it in the current map, only in this draft. You can do the same on the second unit trust. And now at the bottom here, I can start to add additional financials to the picture. So So I want to add a new discretionary investment. Okay, let's set provider. And that'll be for 290,000. And I create. That'll be reflected now in pink, and you can see the little plus there to show I'm adding a financial. But think about it from the conversation point of view with the clients. I can now at the bottom here hide these changes, so I'm reflecting the current picture. And so the first thing that we want to talk through is combining these into an investment that targets the return that you require. What will that mean? It will mean we remove these two and we create a new one that looks like this. So you can see how using drafts can just help that conversation flow to reflect changes that we're deciding on. If I wanted to edit something, for example, perhaps we want to do a section 14 transfer on this retirement annuity, I can open it up. Because I'm in the draft mode, all changes is just in this draft. And I can put a note in here that we want to process a transfer and update. There you'll see it's now pink and it's got the little pen here. Okay. Once I'm in the draft, I can also put notes in if I want to note anything that I need to remember in that conversation or things that I want to discuss with the client as part of that conversation. I can note it here to access it quickly. And I can also flip through any different drafts that I've made. I can flip through here and reflect them on the picture. You can also PDF this on the top right, which will create a printout. If you're going to see a client face to face and you want to work through the draft changes, you can generate their current map and the draft, or take the draft and work through that with them. Okay. And when you're done and you want to close it, you can just close the draft here. If you want to accept any of the changes that you've made because you've proposed it, but now in conversation with the client, they're going to go ahead with that, you simply open up the financial where there's a change, and you'll see there's a new tab now at the top that you can select, and you can press the green button if it's creating an asset. If it's deleting, it'll say delete the asset, and you can accept the change by doing that. Only at that point will it change the client's current picture that you've created. Yeah, but that's how you would accept each of the drafts.
And Kirsty,
Right,
the deleted items, I mean, do you have to, I guess you could, well, the question is just, and
it would
it's
be
one of
the
the
same.
questions we got. Okay, so we need to do that. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to accept each of the changes individually that you've created so that you have the ability to accept some and not all of them. So you go in and select each one every time you've made a change, it'll have this drafts tab, click into it, and then select that you want to implement that change or accept that change. Okay. All right, so that's how to. The next step I wanted to look at is a couple of scenarios. The first scenario that comes to mind when I think of drafts is retirement. That's a time in someone's life where there is a lot of change happening in one go, and structurally, typically there's a lot of change on the client's map. So in this case, this client is a year away from retirement, and you can see here he's earning an income still. He's got his employer retirement fund. He's got some group life benefits and some personal benefits. He's got a unit trust investment and a property. But now we've gone through the planning. If I click on target maps, we've calculated sort of what income does he require in retirement? Is there sufficient funding? In this case, it's luckily almost 100% funded, and he requires 32,000 a month. But now what I want to do is really show the client the impact of this change. And this could be for any life event, but in this case, we're going to look at retirement. What are the things that are going to change when the client retires in a year's time? So I've created a draft that I can do beforehand, go in and select the draft and apply it. Now we can take the client through this and say, the first thing we're going to do is take this employer fund, that will fall away. We're going to withdraw the 500,000 that's tax-free and put that into an emergency savings for you. With the remaining 6.5 million will go into a living annuity. The income we're drawing from that living annuity will be 22,000 a month, and we'll draw an additional 10,000 a month or 120,000 a year from your unit trust investment. Your salary will obviously fall away at retirement, and with that, so will the group life cover and your income protection benefits that you have, but your personal cover will remain. So you can see again just how showing it tangibly to a client, I can easily talk through what the changes will be when the client retires, what that impact will be, and reflect that. Yeah. Any questions on that scenario, Benny? I see there's a couple of
Yeah,
Q&As there.
just I think I'm going to leave the questions until we get to the relevant space, so guys can keep on posting questions. Maybe just the one thing for people looking. I mean, can you guys see what Kirsty is doing here? She's got 4 tabs open, and it's such an awesome feature of Asset Map. You know, if you're working with a client and it's complex, and you don't want to flick through different people or different legal entities, you can open up multiple tabs, each on the right place. Just be careful to open them more than an hour or two before the meeting, because at some point it'll time out. But it's very powerful to have multiple tabs open and flick from one to the other.
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, you could have one with the current picture and one with the draft on, and flip between the two even. All right. The other scenario that came to mind when thinking of, use cases for drafts is again
Sorry to
where there's
interrupt, Kirsty, but
yeah,
sorry, just
no,
here's a question. How do you do that, that you open the multiple tabs? And I think, well,
oh,
my
so if
non-IT
you
way is you just right click and duplicate.
right click and then duplicate, and then you can change, in the next one it'll duplicate exactly, but then you can navigate into another household, you can navigate into another, the target maps even, so you could have one open with the map, one with the target maps, or different individuals that you want to reflect, or of course you could just log in, just open up Asset Map again, it'll open up again in the other tab. Okay, perfect. Right. So the other scenario that came to mind, thinking about, which would be good cases for drafts, is again when there's a lot of change in one go, or complex change. So in this example, I wanted to look at in the event of death. And so for Jesse, I'm going to assume, sorry, Jesse, that he passes away now. And he's got, he's earning an income, he's got a retirement annuity, he's got an employer fund, property, group life cover, and a unit trust investment. And we know that one of the complexities around death is that everything is treated differently. Some goes into the estate and is handled by the executor, others is handled by the trustees of the fund, and that can take a few months to work through, and some will go directly to the client. So I thought drafts is a great way of reflecting that, reflecting how the different financials will move into the estate or to the individual, and also who it's going to be handled by. So here I've created a draft. So I click on drafts again, select the draft to show the transfer of assets. And the first thing we'll see here is if I look at the estate, I can show that, Jesse, the investments that Jesse had in the employer fund, as well as the retirement annuity and the group life cover, those three will all be handled by the trustees. And that is going to take some time for them to determine who are the dependents, and to, make that funds available for the family. The unit trust and the property, those will move into the estate and be handled by the executor. So you can see as part of this draft, I not only changed ownership, but I also changed the description. So we can see what's handled by the executor and what's handled by the trustees. But the life cover, that's the personal life cover that Jesse had, that because the spouse is the beneficiary, will move immediately across to her. So again, using drafts to reflect movement, to reflect changes, but also to describe what that process is going to look like and who's handling those different sections. Okay. And then the last scenario is also just through a process now. If we think about it as part of our, if it's not a life event like retirement or a death, or it's not complex structural changes, it's just part of our process. We've looked at a client's current position, we've worked through the planning, and we want to reflect that implementation, or at least or even implementation options. In this client scenario, there's income, retirement funds, unit trusts, and property, but we can see there's a big gap in terms of risk benefits for this client. So as part of the process that you would normally follow, you'd go into target maps, create target maps for, in the event of loss of life. We had a look at what are the requirements for Jeff in the event of loss of life, and it was, income replacements and covering debts and final expenses. And based on that, we could see that there's about 9 million shortfall in terms of death. And to fill that gap, we're proposing an additional 10 million in life cover. On the disability side, we can see it's, there's no funding at the moment. So we are proposing income protection in this example of 40,000, and we're proposing some severe illness cover of 600,000, so which is 1 times annual income in this case. So we've gone through that process, we've agreed that with the client, but now I can use drafts to reflect that on the map and also to reflect the impact or premium for the client. So in this draft, you'll see that I've actually updated the stencil blocks to say what we're agreeing to do is implement 10 million in life cover, 40,000 in income protection, and 600,000 in critical illness. And here I can even put in the premium of what that cost will be. Okay, so again, using the drafts to reflect what we've already agreed in target maps and reflect that for the client, making it tangible. Now we can also, in this case, work through different examples. Perhaps we're proposing 3 different options of benefits. We could flip through different drafts to say, this is option 1, this is option 2, this is option 3, and let's decide on what is the option that's right for this client. And I can then accept those changes. And once I accept them, they will then pull through to target maps where I can reflect, this is now your current position. So those are some of the scenarios that we thought would be a good use of drafts. Again, because there's complexity, or where simplicity and showing it visually would help the client make an informed decision. I'm going to just stop sharing and flip back into the presentation, and just to end off, and then we'll start with some questions. But maybe just in summary, drafts is a great way to create clarity. And I like this, visually depict structural changes, because often we talk to clients through planning and we say things like, we're going to move the living annuity or move the retirement fund into the living annuity, and income's going to come from here and this is going to come from there. But it's hard for the client to visualize that. By showing it and reflecting it in a draft, we can help clients really understand what those changes are and feel like they're making it, feel that they can really make an informed decision. It's great to illustrate multiple options, when there's lots of options and we want to make sure we've taken the client through each and every one of them and they understand them. It's a great way of doing that. And mostly to visualize future possibilities. This is where you're at today, but this is what the future could look like with the changes that we make. All right. So that is drafts. Should we open up for any questions? And please share in the chat if you think of scenarios that you think it'll be great at. Please share it with everyone in the chat.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Kirsty. I mean, I love the way Adam talks about it. Think about this example where somebody's remodeling their kitchen. What is the architect or the whoever's installing the kitchen? What do they do very cleverly? They show different layouts or different images of what the kitchen could look like. Now we as financial advisors often would go like, no, but we know what's in best interest for clients, so we'll just model the one kitchen. But the fact that you're modeling, even if you know this is the best solution, the fact that they're modeling the different kitchens, talking to the client, engaging with them. And so just think about that, like modeling a kitchen example. I think that's really, really powerful. Yeah, so far, Kirsty, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positive feedback. The one question maybe, and it's a little bit technical, but sure, just from Terence is asking, just the interaction between drafts and target maps. Now, yeah, because it can quickly get super confusing. Are we working with, yeah, so maybe just your thoughts on how do we keep that nice and simple?
Yeah, and I think it's a new feature, and maybe that evolves a little bit, but how it's intended now is that you would show a client their current picture and then model scenarios and target maps like you normally do, and then use drafts to reflect this is sort of the agreed or the different options that we're working through. So to clarify, when you create a draft, it's not pulling through to target maps at all, or giving you the ability to select that. You would still use your normal process in target maps where you create scenarios and look at different options for the client. The drafts is then to reflect that in the map and show that change. But once you've implemented a draft or accepted a draft, Then as per normal, that'll pull into target maps where you can select it.
Kirsty, and we're just about out of time, but here's an awesome suggestion. Terence is asking, how do we use this for annual reviews? For example, showing changes in premiums or different costs or different product features. And yeah, I'd love to hear your view, but my simple thing there would be wherever it's material, I think it may well be worth it to in other words, where you want to surface or highlight an issue that's coming up in the work that you've done in preparing for the review. It's an awesome way to highlight that thing in the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. There's also a suggestion to do more of these quick format sessions, but for existing functionality. So I like that too, and we'll take that into next year as well. But it seems like the short format is being well received, so that's awesome. We'll try and stick to these 30-minute slots.
Awesome.
Really focus on one thing.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to end the recording now. So thanks everyone for your participation.